Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Kmart, and I want to talk about some basketball. And today, we are putting together yet another entry into the early off-season preview series. If you aren't familiar with the format just yet, we're going through every single team in the league, asking a handful of questions of each of those teams here in the early stages of the off-season to just kind of get a feel for maybe what some of the primary concerns are for every team in this off-season period. So we continue to make our way through the list. Today we're going to be talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, well, let's talk about them because the Cavs got a little bit weird here, right? They came into the season with relatively high expectations. For the most part, they live up to it. They make it to the playoffs, and then uh, the wheels kind of fall off. So there is certainly a lot to talk about with this team. So with that in mind, we're just going to dive right into it. We'll put some stats up on the screen for you. In terms of the Cavs regular season record, they go 51 and 31. That was enough for the fourth seed in the Eastern Conference, put them second in the Central Division. Not a bad regular season for the Cavs, but as we said, once they reach the playoffs, things get a little bit rough. 1-4 in their lone playoff series as they were eliminated in round one. So, not quite living up to what their expectations were, but we will be talking about that. In the meantime, we'll take a look at some of the statistics here for the Cavs because all of that looks pretty good in terms of offensive rating. They were a top 10 team, ninth place overall. They had the best defense in the league by defensive rating, which gave them a net rating of second overall. They did play with the slowest pace in the league at 30th, but when you have the top defense, that kind of does explain a little bit of that. You were sort of slowing the pace down to take advantage of your defense. And, well, outside of that, 16th highest payroll. So around the middle of the pack here in terms of their salaries. Not bad for a playoff team to be operating in the lower half of those payrolls, right? So there's some of the stats for the Cavaliers. We can take a quick look at the additions and losses for this team as well, because this is one that we're going to get through pretty damn quickly. For the Cavs, so far, the only addition was their lone draft pick. They took Imani Bates. And I'm pretty sure that's it for them. Haven't made any trades yet. There's plenty of rumors going around, but no moves there, which means also no losses from that team as of yet. They've got one or two free agent questions to answer, but no changes to their lineups at this point in the offseason. So with that in mind, we can get directly into some of our questions here. And our first question does revolve around one of the few free agent situations that they have. And that question is Levert a part of this team's long-term plan? Chris Levert, I'm not sure how French you're supposed to pronounce it, is a question mark for this team. The Donovan Mitchell trade seemingly changed the entire trajectory of the Cavs, and not just in terms of the team's actual performance or their playoff ambitions, but just where the team was sort of going as a whole with their roster construction, right? Prior to Donovan Mitchell being picked up, uh, Levert was being looked at as a major piece for the Cavaliers, perhaps as sort of their main running mate kind of guy to go along with a Darius Garland led offense. Um, when they first acquired him, right, his limited time in Cleveland after being acquired around the trade deadline back in the 21-22 season was not the most impressive, right? But there was still speculative value, right? The same kind of argument that we make for midseason acquisitions last season. We say it could still work, the player still provides value. Let's see what happens if we put an entire season of, this pairing and this roster together. Now though, that value doesn't really seem to be there, right? It doesn't help that Levert is holding to mostly the same numbers, or in some cases slightly worse, than he was in that small slice back in the 21-22 season. So now his value sort of drops a little bit, and now you can't really afford to say, well, let's see what we get with a full season. You just got a full season. It wasn't fantastic, but now, I mean, you've got Donovan Mitchell in the lineup. You have hopefully fully healthy versions of Jared Allen, Darius Garland. You still have Evan Mobley, who was just massive as a rookie and continues to improve. So you've got core pieces to build around, and it seems like Levert is not one of those core pieces anymore, right? His value to this team specifically has kind of disappeared. So if you were willing to accept maybe a smaller role, step into a position as a guy off the bench instead of a starter, instead of one of the main focal points of this offense, then I could see the Cavs re-signing him on a honestly significantly reduced contract to what he was making before. But if that kind of compromise isn't something that Levert or his people really want to look into, then I think the Cavs are okay with just kind of letting him walk, right? Or maybe they work out some sort of sign and trade with somebody, something of that nature, but I'm not sure that the Cavs care to commit long term to Levert, not just because his numbers declined a little bit, but because they have the means to pretty much replace him and move forward with something better. So, is he a part of the team's long-term plan? Long-term plan, I would say no. I think they're okay with sort of letting him walk and seeing what the free agent market decides for him, which is unfortunate for Levert, right? I mean, he still didn't play terribly. You look at his numbers. I mean, it's not absolutely awful. It's just not what the Cavs need right now. So they may be looking to move on from him. But that brings us to our second point here. The first point was about a player. The second point is more of a team issue for the Cavaliers. Question two is how is this team this bad at rebounding? And I know that's going to sound crazy for a team that has Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, but hear me out here because I am getting somewhere. The Cavs had the number one defense in the league last season by defensive rating, or were tied for it. One of the two. Either way, they're first. They employ one of the most exciting young front courts with the aforementioned Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. They look pretty good. Neither Allen nor Mobley are the most offensively oriented players, right? They focus a little bit more on defense and rebounding themselves, but that feeds into the team's top rated defensive mindset. Allen and Mobley averaged 18.8 rebounds per game this season. Once we got to the playoffs, that barely dipped at all. It went to 17.4 between the two of them, which is still fantastic. But the team as a whole still ended up being one of the worst rebounding teams in the league. They were 25th. And the biggest reason for that is that, rebounding is still a team effort. And the Allen Mobley duo was fantastic by themselves, but they can't do it alone, especially if and when one or both of them isn't on the floor, right? If one of those two isn't there, all of a sudden there's this massive hole in the team's rebounding numbers that the rest of the lineup didn't really do a fantastic job of filling. Part of the reason for that is because your starting backcourt of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland are not the most renowned for their defensive and rebounding efforts, right? Like we say for a lot of these star players, it's not that they're bad, right? They're not sort of below replacement level, but they're so much better on offense that that's where the vast majority of their effort goes to. So the numbers for their defense and their rebounding sort of takes the hit to compensate for that. But if you have too many players like that, too many players who are offensively focused, then the situation becomes untenable when you don't have your two big men on the floor at the same time. And to really sort of drive this point home, did a little bit of digging into their rebounding numbers, and it is a little bit worse than you think, right? I'm not quite overreacting here. If you take a look at their numbers, the team traded Kevin Love away midway-ish through the season, right? Sent him to Miami. And Kevin Love still ended up being the team's third leading rebounder in the regular season by rebounds per game average. And that's only looking at Kevin Love's games with Cleveland. Not counting any of his statistics from Miami, he was still the third leading rebounder on the Cavaliers by season's end. Even if we took away the constraint of only looking at per game averages and looked at total rebounds for the team, right? Kevin Love is still fifth in total rebounds for the Cavs, only counting the games he played for the Cavs. And you might say, okay, Kmart, yeah, fifth. Well, okay, that means that there's 4 guys in front of them. Yeah, that's true. However, 2 of those guys are Allen and Mobley. That is expected. They're 1 and 2. I'm not sure which one is which. I think it's Allen and then Mobley. But either way, they're 1 and 2. Chris LeVert is in 4th. Donovan Mitchell is in 3rd. LeVert has just 2 more total rebounds than Kevin Love does in 5th place. And Donovan Mitchell in 3rd place has just 9 more rebounds than Kevin Love. And these are totals. These are totals for all the games played with the Cavs this season. So Kevin Love, in half a season in Cleveland, had just 2 fewer rebounds than LeVert over the whole season and 9 fewer rebounds than Mitchell over the whole season. That can't happen. I mean, I know Kevin Love he goes out, he's getting older. He still fights for rebounds. He still knows his role. But you cannot have a guy in half a season have a total of 11 fewer rebounds than the guys in 4th and 3rd. You got to be doing a better job than that. And the Cavs simply didn't. As they're currently constructed, they just don't have the rebounding consistency from their guards or from the wing. They are entirely focused down low. If it's not the power forward in the center, Mobley and Allen grabbing rebounds, then a lot of the times they simply don't grab any rebounds. And that's not really something that you can deal with moving forward. And it's something that got exploited pretty heavily. If you look at their series against the New York Knicks in the playoffs, that's one of the things that really burned them, right? The Knicks had guys coming in, grabbing boards. The biggest example, Josh Hart, who's playing that sort of hybrid 2-3 guard forward kind of position. He's still getting in there and grabbing, obviously not the same amount of rebounds as Jared Allen or Evan Mobley, but he's getting in there for, 4, 5, 6 a night. And the Cavs had nothing comparable on their side to throw in there. If it wasn't the big men, it was no one. So this needs to be fixed by the Cavaliers. You can't rely exclusively on your sort of main duo down low to do all your rebounding for you. I don't know if they bring in more players to try and bolster the rebounding in the guard and forward positions, or if they just attempt to shift the mindset of the players that they do have, but something needs to be done for the Cavaliers, because if they get out-rebounded that consistently again this season, we're probably going to see similar results with them getting knocked out of the playoffs early, or potentially being a very, very sort of lower seed in those playoffs in the first place. So we'll see what it is they look to do there. But that leads us into point number 3 for Cleveland. That point is, will the Cavs attempt to change their identity? More importantly, should they change it at all? Now, the Cavs were the slowest team in the league this season by pace. We mentioned that at the top. They are ranked 30th, but they were still the best defense in the regular season and a top 5 offense by offensive rating, even with their slower style of play. So a kind of mix of the old, Memphis Grizzlies grit and grind mindset on defense with a fair bit of firepower on offense, right? Despite the star power that they had in Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, the team was not afraid to work a strong portion of their offense through Allen and Mobley down low. Even if those guys didn't have fantastic scoring numbers, right? They weren't averaging 20-plus points a game. There were still a lot of situations where the Cavs said, hey, we're going to get touches to our big men down low. We're going to work the post. Even if that's not where the shot comes from, we're going to play sort of an inside-out type of game. And that worked. Slowing down the game worked. Taking advantage and leaning on your defense worked. The team was near the bottom of the league in total, not total, in field goal attempts per game. They were in the lower half of field goals made. They were in the lower half of points scored. But their offense was so efficient and they were so good on the defensive end that they forced their opponents into bad situations. That is the game plan here. If you slow the pace of play down so that both you and your opponents get fewer possessions, the focus becomes on how efficiently can you play. If you're not guaranteed to get, 3 shots to your opponent's 2, that means you have to make yours. Otherwise, you're not going to have the volume that you need to simply shoot your way to victory. The Cavs intentionally tried to play a game that would take that sort of style away from their opponents, right? The problem is that plan falls apart in the playoffs against New York, right? And the reasoning for that is a little bit complicated here. The Knicks didn't necessarily shoot the lights out, right? They weren't just sinking shot after shot after shot. In fact, their numbers are mostly either even or worse offensively than the Cavs were. But that's the point right there. That is the problem. The Cavs won games by slowing down the pace and being more efficient than their opponents in that slower style. But when that efficiency isn't there, when the Cavs aren't hitting their shots consistently enough, then the advantage of that slower pace disappears, right? Slow the pace down, limit the total number of possessions that each team gets on offense, and then win by making the most of your opportunities compared to your opponents. But if you aren't hitting your shots and your opponents are slightly better off than you in terms of their efficiency, you're going to lose games. And that's what ended up happening. The Knicks did not massively outscore them, really. It just was that little bit better, which, again, sort of does also come back to the rebounding. If the Cavs had been a better rebounding team, then maybe some of their missed shots could have turned into second chance opportunities, but we already talked about that point. But the question is, if you're the Cavs, your style of play did not work in this matchup, right? You weren't as efficient as you needed to be, and the Knicks took advantage of that. Should the team try and change its identity at this point? Do you shake things up? It worked remarkably well in the regular season, and for me, it seems far more likely that the Cavaliers plan to simply make adjustments to their players, make adjustments to some of their offensive and defensive sets, as opposed to trying to entirely rework the nature of their team and go away from what worked for them for the vast majority of the season. I don't know. It just seems like a big change to make over the course of a single off season, to abandon that slower pace, to abandon the sort of grit and grind mindset in favor of something else. And I'm not sure that they want to do it. They have the personnel to try, but at the same time they don't. I know that statement doesn't make any sense, but they have Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, right? You've got a pair of young, fast, high octane guards who can score pretty much at will. So there's an argument to be made here that we could have Mitchell and Garland take point here and just run up and down the court repeatedly, right? Go for a faster paced offense, maybe abandon a few more of those slower post play sets and just kind of run it up like that. Get that offense from top 10 to maybe top 5. If you do that, though, Allen and Mobley are going to suffer. They're not the fastest guys. They're big guys. They want to get set up. They want to be slow and methodical. And yeah, sure, they can play at that faster pace if you need them to, but they're going to get tired a lot faster. They're going to probably need more rest if you're just running a track meet up and down the court. So that's what I mean by that. The Cavs do have the personnel to play at a faster pace if they want to, but it will come at the detriment of players who got used to the slow style that they currently employ. So which of those two do you think is better? For me, I still like the slower style. It worked. They won 50 plus games. Yes, they ran into a bad matchup in the playoffs, but I think you take a season's worth of results that you know were pretty good instead of rolling the dice on changing the entire nature of your team for a plan that honestly may not be better. You don't really know. So, um, that is it for the Cavs here. They really don't have too many external issues, if that makes sense. I think a lot of the problems with the Cavaliers come from their own play, and I think a lot of their problems can be fixed without having to, go out and make a trade, go out and sign a big name. A lot of their problems can be fixed by just having the team address its weaknesses and work on them. And I know that's a massive oversimplification of the process of a team getting better, but the Cavs have a chance to really shore up their main weaknesses in a way that a lot of teams would struggle with. A lot of the other teams who have issues need bigger and more complicated solutions compared to the Cavaliers. So we'll see if they can make those changes, if they can make those improvements. If they do, I'm pretty damn sure they get past the first round of the playoffs next season unless the wheels fall off and someone gets hurt. So that is going to do it for Cleveland. Hopefully they can put it all together. But let me know what you think for this team. Should they try to keep LeVert? Is it okay to just let him walk? How do you think they address the rebounding concerns outside of Allen and Mobley? And do you think that they should change the identity of the team? Do you think that the slow pace still should be the call for them, that it still works? Or should they try to speed things up and increase their tempo a little bit? But whatever your thoughts, please feel free to let me know. But other than that, thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you later.